Last month, I talked about the best print-on-demand companies for printing paperback books, but what about hardcover books? Because that is an entirely different ballgame. Today, I have 3 different hardcover books from Ingram Spark, Barnes & Noble Press, and Kindle Direct Publishing to compare the printing quality as well as the printing options, royalties, printing costs, and so many other things. All in the name of figuring out what is the best print-on-demand company for self-published authors wanting to publish hardcover books in 2025. So for comparison's sake, all the hardcover books in this video are going to be 5.5 by 8.5 or 6 by 9 if 5.5 by 8.5 wasn't an option. I didn't realize all the companies didn't have 5.5 by 8.5 as an option, and by the time I got to that realization, I had already ordered 2 of the books, so oh well. But they are all hardcover, they are all cream paper, they are all standard black and white interiors, and they are also all matte book covers. Now, besides that point, there's actually a lot of things different with these books going on, and we'll be comparing them later on. Like I said, the companies we're comparing are Kindle Direct Publishing, Barnes & Noble Press, and Ingram Spark. Now, there is another print-on-demand company that offers hardcover books, and that is Lulu. I talked about Lulu in my video about paperback books, and I just didn't really feel like Lulu was a very good competitor when comparing to the other print-on-demand companies. But if you do want to learn about a lot of the other different aspects of Lulu and how it compares to other print-on-demand companies, watch my previous video. Now, for this hardcover video, there's only a few different judging categories, and that is the cost to print the book, royalties, print quality, and print options specific to hardcover. Now, you may notice there's a lot of judging categories that are missing, and these are the judging categories that I talked about in my previous video on paperback books. And that is because whether it's a paperback book or a hardcover book, it's going to be the same either way. So if you want to learn about any of the following categories, make sure to watch my previous video. And in my previous video, I talk about the cost to publish, make updates to the books, the uploading process, royalties, user-friendliness, customer service, and distribution. Those are all things we are not talking about in today's video for sake of not repeating myself, but if you want to learn about those things, make sure to watch the video on paperback books, because it will be the same for hardcover books. I also want to say, if you want in-depth tutorials on how to publish your book on KDP, Ingram Spark, or Barnes & Noble Press, I have video tutorials already up here on YouTube. I will leave those linked down below. This video is also a part of my Beginner's Guide to Self-Publishing a Book series here on YouTube. So anything in the self-publishing process, I probably have a YouTube video on it, so I will also leave that playlist linked down below as well. Now, before we start comparing the hardcover books, let's talk about the anatomy of a hardcover book, because I want you guys to know and understand the different terminology. So this right here is our jacket for the hardcover book. We are all pretty familiar with the dust jacket that goes on hardcover books. This is a very basic one that I designed for my book, The Trail to You and Me. It's actually not available in hardcover, which is why it has such a basic dust jacket, because I just wanted to design something quickly for this video. When you remove the dust jacket, you are left with the case laminate. The case laminate is the book itself. In this case, it's a pretty plain design because, again, I just wanted to design something quickly for the video, so we just have the name on the spine. And like I said, this is a case laminate, but this is also a case laminate because this hardcover book does not have a dust jacket. So just know the terminology of what I mean when I say case laminate. Moving on, let's talk about the cost to print each hardcover book. So for KDP, it costs $9.48 to print my hardcover book. Ingram Spark, it costs $11.83. And Barnes & Noble Press, it costs $12.06. So even though KDP is the cheapest option, you'll see later that is the cheapest because it does not have a dust jacket, which may or may not be a deal breaker when it comes to publishing your hardcover book. But before we talk about that, let's also talk about royalties. How much you will earn as an author every single time you sell your book. So let's just say I list this hardcover book for $24.99. If that is the case and I sell my hardcover book on Kindle Direct Publishing, I will make $5.54. But again, this book has no dust jacket. So also with that note, you might not want to list your hardcover book at such a high price because readers might expect a dust jacket. But for comparison's sake, I wanted to choose one price point to price all the books at to compare the royalties that way. Now with Ingram Spark, which does have a dust jacket, we would make $2.91, but this is only if we choose the 40% wholesale discount. If you watched my previous video or you're familiar with Ingram Spark, you know that you're able to choose the wholesale discount that you give. Now they actually suggest that you choose a 55% wholesale discount for retailers. Now, unfortunately, if I wanted to do the 55% wholesale discount, I would actually have to price my book higher because I cannot list it at $24.99 right now and still do a 55% discount. So in this case, I only have 40% discount as an option. Barnes & Noble Press is a lot simpler. We just make a simple $2.95 per sale. Now let's talk print quality. So I'm just gonna go through each book one by one and compare them that way. So first up we have Ingram Spark. I feel like Ingram Spark tends to be the one that people go to most when it comes to printing hardcovers because they do have the dust jacket. They also have the widest distribution. Again, if you want to know more about the distribution options, watch my previous video on hardcover books. The dust jacket, I have no complaints on. I have had other authors complain though that sometimes they get their book and it didn't have a dust jacket when it was supposed to, or the dust jacket was like applied incorrectly and unevenly and it just didn't look good and they had to rebend it and fix it. I personally have never had that problem, but I wanted to make note of it. Now, once we take the dust jacket off, I chose the option where I get to design the case laminate myself, and I just chose a very basic color with text on the spine. I am 99% sure that I applied the text in the correct spot, but we can see here that it's a little lower than it should be, and I don't know if that's a printing error or my error. I'm pretty confident it's a printing error though. Another thing to note is that for some reason, there's like a smudge on the front cover and it's actually slightly sticky. I don't think I've ever had that before. Mistakes happen, but again, we're comparing things here. Now, the biggest issue I have here is when it comes to the bleed of my book. Now, I actually used the same exact file for the interior on the hardcover as I did for the interior on the paperback. And the interior on the paperback printed perfectly. The interior on the hardcover, you can see that I know for a fact that I did the bleed correctly because it was accepted and it looked great on the PDF preview, and also it looked great on the paperback. But for some reason, when the hardcover was printed, we can see here that the image does not extend all the way to the edge of the page. So this, I assume, is a printing error, and this is a printing error that occurs not on every single page because sometimes it extends all the way to the edge, but then also sometimes it does not. Like, it seems almost like every other chapter header does not extend to the edge of the page, and that's a huge issue. That would make me embarrassed to publish this book as it is. Otherwise, the image quality itself on the interior is the same as the paperback, where it has a slight graininess look to it, but overall I think it's fine as long as you're not looking to print anything super fancy for your interior. But again, this is just plain black and white interior. I'm actually a little surprised by this error because I've gotten hardcover books through Ingram Spark before, was able to successfully do a bleed. So this may just be a one-time fluke. But if I was planning to publish a hardcover book and got this back as a result, I'd be very disappointed and very conflicted on what to do next because I would not want a reader to have a copy that was like this. Next, let's talk about the hardcover book for Barnes & Noble Press, which, if you watched my previous video, is using the same printer as Ingram Spark as well as Draft to Digital, though Draft to Digital only does paperback books. So the quality tends to be very similar, but we also learned in the previous video about paperbacks that there are some differences, which I find very confusing. But we have Barnes & Noble Press. The dust jacket looks perfect. It's actually very bright and colorful. It might even be... No, it's the same as Ingram Spark. I'm just going crazy. So the dust jacket looks great. We can take it off. Now, unfortunately for Barnes & Noble Press, you cannot design your case laminate. You're given a default digital cloth case laminate, which is this right here. Ingram Spark actually also has this option, the digital cloth case laminate. It really isn't anything fancy. It just kind of looks like a jean texture or a linen texture. It's like a very dark blue. And it also has a little bit of smudges here and there, but nothing too concerning. Now, when it comes to the interior, I was not able to accomplish a successful bleed on the cover pages, and I don't know why. I know I was able to figure it out for the paperback edition when I was using Barnes & Noble Press because I was able to do it with my paperback book. For some reason, I could not get them to accept my files when it came to the hardcover edition, and I don't know why. So that could be user error on my part, but even if it is user error on my part, that also means that to accomplish a bleed for Barnes & Noble Press is harder than the other print-on-demand companies. And this is because when you print a book with a bleed, you need to extend past the page. So this book in particular is 6x9. And so when you print a 6x9 interior with a bleed, you typically want to go a little bit over the 6x9 size. But when I uploaded a file that was bigger than 6x9, it denied the file, and I could upload a file that was 6x9, but then it wouldn't cut correctly and it would be errors. I couldn't figure it out. So again, that could be user error. I know I figured it out with the paperback edition, but for some reason I couldn't remember what I did previously, or what I did previously didn't work for some reason. So you guys might be able to figure it out, but I was also in a rush and I couldn't figure it out, and I just gave up and printed it without the cool chapter headers that had this bleed on them. Otherwise though, I think it came out pretty good, and it's basically like all the other books. Which brings us to last but not least, Kindle Direct Publishing. Kindle Direct Publishing is the newest in the hardcover world. I made an entire dedicated video comparing Kindle Direct Publishing hardcovers to Ingram Spark hardcovers, and I go a little bit more in depth over there. So if you want to watch that video, I will leave it linked down below. But we're just going to go over it quickly. So the cover, as you can see, we do not have a dust jacket, and that is the biggest downfall to KDP. I don't know if they have plans to add a dust jacket in the future, but adding a dust jacket onto a book is like a whole nother printing process, and then you have to combine it. And honestly, I was just happy they have hardcovers at all. There are some books that print really great as hardcovers that are just a case laminate. Like I have the Book Launch Planner series. Those are available as hardcovers or paperbacks, and I think they make really great hardcovers. However, when it comes to fiction, I feel like very, very rarely do we see fiction without a dust jacket. And that's just kind of a bummer because it kind of makes you automatically write them off as a fiction author. But let's talk about them anyways, because honestly, this case laminate is pretty great. I will say there's some smudging on the back. I don't know what it is that is smudging these hardcover books, because every single hardcover book has had some sort of smudge. I think it's just pure luck that this smudge was on the back of the KDP book. I assume it kind of looks like what might be the glue that glues the whole thing together. That's what it's looking like. But that is something to note, that it happens. Now the interior looks great as always. The image quality is great. The cut lines are great. Like every single image reaches all the way to the page, and it just looks really good. I will say I'm looking at this now and I realized I think I printed this in white paper, and I double checked my account and I did. So sorry, this one's not in cream paper. It is supposed to be in white paper. That was my bad. I don't think it really affects much of the things we discuss here today, but it just looks a lot brighter. So overall, the KDP one is a beautiful copy. It looks really great. It's just a bummer that it doesn't have a dust jacket. And I should also note that KDP proof copies have this not for resale bar across the cover. The final copy obviously won't have this on the cover. And here's all three books side by side. We have KDP, Barnes & Noble Press in the middle, the awkward tall one because they don't have 5.5 by 8.5 printing, and Ingram Spark. So in terms of printing quality, they all have their issues. I think KDP is the best quality. I think the only issue with KDP is they don't have the dust jacket, because otherwise I would say I normally love Ingram Spark, but the fact that the bleed was printed incorrectly is a pretty big concern. And then I also think the Barnes & Noble Press one is really nice, but the fact that I couldn't even figure out how to do the bleed on that copy is also really concerning. So I'm going to let you guys be the judge of that on who you think is the best in terms of printing quality. Now let's talk printing options. We've already touched upon it a little bit talking about how KDP doesn't offer dust jackets, but let's go into even more detail because there's a lot of variability when it comes to what options you have when printing hardcover books. So let's cover KDP first, and I am just going to read this right off of my laptop because there's a lot of information to go over. So at this time, KDP only has 5 trim sizes for hardcover books. They offer black and white and premium color for their interior. They offer white or cream paper, a gloss or matte finish, but no dust jacket. Let's talk about the printing options for Ingram Spark. So it actually varies depending on what color paper. So if you choose white paper, your book has to be between these size options: 5 inches wide by 8 inches tall, and or between 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. And if you choose cream or groundwood paper, your book needs to be between 5.5 inches wide by 8 inches tall and 8.14 inches wide by 9.21 inches tall. For ink color, you have options of black and white, standard color, premium color, or ultra premium color. For paper types, you can choose between groundwood 38 pound, cream 50 pound, white 50 pound, or white 70 pound. Now, if you're curious about groundwood paper is the paper that you see with like mass market paperback books. That's what groundwood paper is. It's that really thin, like almost textured paper. For covers, we have options of glossy, matte, or the digital cloth cover that I was talking about earlier with Barnes & Noble Press. Like I said, Ingram Spark also offers that, but it's only for the US and UK. So if you're outside of the US or UK, they can't print that. You can choose to have your hardcover with or without a jacket, and you can print on the case laminate and on the jacket, so total customizability. Now, Barnes & Noble Press offers 10 trim sizes, and the weird thing, as I was going through Barnes & Noble website, some of those trim sizes had a dust jacket, and some of those trim sizes did not have a dust jacket. So you have to really go onto the website and play around to make sure whatever trim size you choose actually does include a dust jacket, because if it doesn't include a dust jacket, you're printing directly on the case laminate. But the odd part is if it does include the dust jacket, you don't have the option to also print on the case laminate. At least I couldn't find that option, and I was exploring the website for a while. For ink, you have black and white, standard color, and full premium color. For paper, you have groundwood 48 pound, cream 50 pound, white 50 pound, or white 70 pound. And like I said in my previous paper, the pound is just how thick the paper is. So the larger the number, the thicker the paper it's going to be. For covers, you can make your cover glossy or matte, and you can print with or without a dust jacket. And like I said earlier, if you do have a dust jacket, you can't control what the case laminate is going to look like. It's just going to be that digital cloth cover. But if you don't have a dust jacket, then you can design the case laminate yourself. So who is the best print-on-demand company for hardcover books in 2025? I don't think there's a definite answer of who the best hardcover printer is. I think it's really still up in the air. My gut wants to say KDP. I feel like they're the most consistent when it comes to quality, but also they don't have a dust jacket. So I also want to say Ingram Spark, but my print sample just told me that their quality of printing isn't very consistent. So I also don't want to say Ingram Spark. So let me know who you personally will choose for printing your hardcover book. And I know we didn't talk about distribution in this video, but I think it's important to note that with KDP, your book is only on Amazon. With Barnes & Noble Press, your book is only on Barnes & Noble. And with Ingram Spark, your book is essentially everywhere, at least with online retailers. And like I mentioned anytime I mention Ingram Spark, I really don't like them as a company. I think they have a lot of issues, and I've encountered so many issues with them myself personally. And I've documented all of my issues that I've had because I've worked with them for a couple years now. And I have an entire playlist here on YouTube, and I fully believe that before you go ahead and work with Ingram Spark, because I do think you can work with them and have a lot of success, I think you have to learn a lot of things beforehand or make mistakes along the way. But rather than you making mistakes, please just watch my Ingram Spark playlist here on YouTube to learn from my own mistakes, and hopefully you cannot encounter them because I was able to do all the scripts for you. Anyways, that is it for this video. Let me know who you personally are going to choose for printing your hardcover books in the comments down below. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next one. So be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe.